So a common objection in our culture of death when you're out and about advocating for your preborn neighbors goes a little bit like this. Well, you want me to love my unborn neighbor as myself? Well, what about loving born kids that need your help, like poor kids or kids in foster care? What are you doing to help them? Now, the reason that this is an objection is they're trying to pit one good thing against another, as if you can't do both. Of course, you can love your born neighbor and your unborn neighbor at the same time, but they're designing this to try to justify the fact that they either do not love their preborn neighbors or that they are not willing to do as much for their preborn neighbors as they are doing for their born neighbors. Now, chances are they're not loving their born neighbors as well as they are asking you to do in the first place. And you need to first and foremost answer, listen, we need to love them both. And if we're trying to love them both, which of these neighbors, which of these human beings are not protected by law, which can be murdered with impunity? It's the preborn child. That's what we're trying to change. Now, there's been a new kind of variation of this argument put forward as of late, and it is whenever abolitionists say we need to establish justice for the preborn child. The laws against murder need to be applied equally to the preborn child as they are in place for the born child. And Christians, of all people, yes, Christians, like pastors, like Bible-believing, teaching, preaching Christians, will say, you're wanting me to care a whole lot about establishing justice for preborn children of like pagans who murder their babies. You want me to care about them more than caring about my own kids? I'm going to focus on protecting them. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, or maybe you just need to know, your born kids are already protected from murder. And actually, that they're here and they're alive and they're your children, you can protect them even in a bad culture because you are their father, right? And this is why the Word of God is so clear, revealing the heart of God, like the heart of God that is revealed in the Word of God is his heart for the fatherless. Look at it. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, John the Baptist's dad. We're talking about from the beginning of the book of books to the end of the book of books. We see that God really wants us to look at the least of these in our culture and to establish justice for them and protect them equally without partiality. That's why he says establish justice for the fatherless, because the fatherless child does not have a dad that is there to protect them. They are being slated for destruction in a culture where the laws say that is justified, precisely because they're not wanted by a mother or a father. And so Christians have this high and radical calling to love the preborn child, their preborn neighbors, as themselves and see them as fatherless kids. Christ came to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children. And so that's what we're trying to do. It's a basic thing. If you want to understand, like, why does an abolitionist do what an abolitionist does? It's like pure and undefiled religion before God the Father is this, right? To visit orphans and widows in their distress. There are abandoned women who need our help. There are abandoned children, fatherless children who need our help. And we should never look at our own children, our own families, our own flesh and blood and say, I'm sorry, I cannot help the fatherless child because I need to help the children that have a father. This is the height of wickedness. I would almost go to say that this is not the heart of the Father. This is not the heart of God, but this is the heart of Satan. And I'm not trying to be too brutal because I know it's a temptation of people whenever they look. Am I going to devote myself to loving my preborn neighbor who I am not related to? Or am I going to love my kids? Well, chances are, and I know this for a fact, you can do both. You can love your children and you can love the children of your enemies. In fact, you're to love your enemies. It's so crazy how Christ tells us these things, right? And you should never pit loving your neighbor as yourself and loving your own children against each other, because these both can be done and done well. It's a common objection in our culture of death to say things like, what about the child in poverty? What about the foster care kid? What are you doing to help them, right? Progressive, liberal, pro-abortion people put this on us all the time. I think they're doing it because they want to try to make us feel hypocritical. Well, you need to tell them, I think we should love them both. And if there were laws allowing the murder of newborns and the murder of preborns, I would be out here advocating for equal protection and equal justice for both. But as it stands, it is not legal to murder born children, but it is legal to murder preborn children. And so, as a Christian called by God and commanded to establish justice for the fatherless, I'm going to look at all these preborn children who don't have fathers advocating, saying, you can't kill my kid. And I'm going to be a father to them. I'm going to try to love them because they do not have anyone else seeking to love and protect them the way my born children are being protected. Or they do not have anyone trying to protect them like even the poor kid and the foster care kid, because those kids do need our help. And if they are being abused and they are being mistreated, we need to reform and work as hard as we can. That's why so many Christians are in foster care and are adopting and are involved in helping. Like, you can do both. So I think what's going on is people try to justify their inaction, their apathy, their indifference, their ageism towards preborn humans by pitting it against something else good that they are maybe doing in loving born kids so that they can justify their lack of love for preborn children. But this is why God calls us to a higher way, and that is to love our neighbors as ourselves. And our neighbors are all fellow image bearers. So hopefully that helps you understand the kind of objections that we hear as abolitionists and why we do what we do. Answer the objection and get out there and never slack in doing good deeds for the glory of God.